What is going on, everybody? Welcome on in. Daily Bread Media here with another full slate preview. College football week 8. We are officially halfway through the season. We're on to the back end. That means we're getting to the good stuff here. Conference plays in full swing. Can't top last week 7, Kevin. What a week of college football, huh?
Yeah, it was awesome. Those games were insane. And it's not a bad thing to see Bama go down, so I'll take that.
Yeah, it was terrific. The full slate delivered. You never see a week that hyped, and it actually delivered. And it definitely came through. The Utah USC game, that was amazing. Everyone was crying at the end. It was beautiful. Beautiful stuff. Beautiful college football, especially when USC's crying at the end of a loss. That was terrific. As a Notre Dame fan, not much to cheer for. Nowadays, that made me a little bit happier. All right, let's go ahead and get started here. We're looking at this full slate here. What's the main thing that jumps out to you this week, Kevin? Anything in particular?
I think there's a lot of mid-price options that are definitely in play. A lot of late, like high fives, low six running backs, and same thing with receivers, and honestly, same thing with quarterbacks. You can certainly get some of those guys and pretty much fit whoever you want this week.
If I had told you before the season started that Bo Nix at 9.3 thousand would be the most expensive quarterback on the slate, and I guess by virtue too, more expensive than CJ Stroud, what would you have told me?
I probably would ask what you were smoking because never.
Yeah, a pretty crazy one. The options this week are not very enticing. Let me just say that if Bo Nix is the most expensive player, right, and then you like the receiving options are a little yuck. It's definitely going to be a mid-range one this week for sure. They got some different teams on the slate this week. I'm seeing a lot of Big 12 this week is kind of my overarching theme. They've had some SEC heavy ones. They definitely went lighter on the SEC. So we got 2 Pac-12 games, and they always sprinkle in their Big 10 games because they include the morning ones, early afternoon for you West Coast folks, and then just kind of some ugly ones like UNLV, Notre Dame. So it's a little bit ugly, but we're going to parse through, give you our best plays as always. All right, ready to get into it, Kevin?
Absolutely.
All right, let's do it. First game on the slate, Kansas and Baylor. Kansas is one of those teams that feels like they're going to be on the slate every single week. They're back. They are a 10-point underdog on the road in Waco, playing against Baylor. Over under here is 58.5, and Kansas has been getting into a fair amount of shootouts lately. Where are you starting your handicap on this one, Kevin? What's the first thing you're looking towards on either side?
It's actually tough because I see that they're going to score points, but I honestly don't know where they're going to come from. So, like we love Devin Neal, love his talent, but he just doesn't do much. Even at 5.3, he just doesn't do much. He's not, I don't know, doesn't get a ton of carries. Honestly, if I'm looking for a cheap option on Kansas, because they probably will be down or in a shootout, I don't mind Fairchild at 3.7. He's had 2 really good games in a row, and I take a shot at it, but I don't have a ton of interest in Kansas at all, even though they're going to score points. I just don't see where it's going to come from consistently anyway.
I agree with you. I love Kansas. I will support Lance Leipold until I die, but it's difficult to tell where the offense is coming from. I agree. Typically at Buffalo, right, he had the amazing rushing attacks and we knew where it was coming from. But this season, they've been getting it done more through the air. They rank 4th in the country in passing PPA and 12th in passing success rate, which I think is a surprise to pretty much everyone out there, especially considering they're going with the backup quarterback. So going against the Baylor team, that their secondary lost everything to the NFL last year. They ranked 91st in passing success rate. You could do crazier things than playing Jason Bean. That being said, the efficiency has just been off the charts. Like you can see there, he attempted 27 passing attempts last game. The good news is he's a dual threat running back or dual threat quarterback. This kid has elite traits. Like when you're watching him, some of the throws he's making is just insane. Like he's rolling out and moving backwards and trying to hit a player on the sidelines. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Against a well-coached Baylor defense, I get they don't have the talent they did a year ago, but that definitely scares me. I think Bean could be a tournament play. Devin Neal, it's just hard for me to get there this week. Baylor is much better on the defensive line than they are elsewhere. I know West Virginia ran all over them last week, but they have some beasts on the defensive line. Right. Ika, that LSU transfer, that kid's a monster. So I don't really see, Neal could stumble into touchdowns, but the thing I don't like with Neal is he just doesn't catch passes, right? So it really limits his upside. 5.3 is an okay price, but not for me. All right, looking at the Baylor side of things, Kevin. Kansas is absolutely dreadful defensively. They rank in my bottom 15 of pretty much all my defensive line metrics. They can't stop the rush. Even against the pass, they really have been kind of, pretty subpar. They rank 88th in PFF's coverage grade. So not great. Any interest in Baylor for you?
Again, it's hard to say just because I don't see where it's coming from. So I'm certainly not going to play Gavin Holmes because he had 200 yards last week. I would say there's zero chance he does that again. And I don't really care what his price is. I think he's going to go from 7 for 200 down to 3 for 17 this week. I'm not going to go there. Honestly, the guy who had a stinker last week, Baldwin, who's obviously their most talented receiver, had a real pooper last week. So that said, this is probably the week you play him. But he's kind of expensive. I don't know. I'll get there on his price.
I think you have to monitor the Blake Shapen news in this one. He was knocked out. Sounds like he's in concussion protocol to me. Like these colleges don't tell you what's going on. So I would really monitor this one closely. Blake Shapen throws an absolutely beautiful deep ball, and Monterey Baldwin is one of the probably 5 fastest players in all of college football. So if Blake Shapen's not playing, definitely not. I think the Monterey Baldwin price is absolutely insane, but I could see where in tournaments against a Kansas team that's been getting into nothing but shootouts and can't cover anyone. Monterey Baldwin obviously could pop off, but definitely tournament play only. Ben Sims, the tight end at 4.6. I mean, that's the correct price. There's nothing really that interesting for me. Even Richard Reese, the running back we've been touting in the past, me and Kevin are both fans, did not really have a great game last week. And Tim McWilliams, it sounds like he's still probably going to be out. They haven't been definite, but said he's going to miss a couple weeks. And then Squirrel Williams behind him is also questionable going into Kansas. So if both McWilliams and Squirrel Williams are out for this one, I think that sets up decently for Reese at 5.9K. However, they did give Quaylen Jones, who had a huge 16-carry game against BYU, basically, almost kept him in that game single-handedly in the fourth quarter. They then all of a sudden gave him 1 carry the next week and totally phased him out. So I can't really tell what this team's doing, Kevin. It's hard to know where it's coming from. If I knew Quaylen Jones was going to get 10 carries at Stone Cold Min, I think he's a worthy play. If both Squirrel Williams and McWilliams are out, I think Quaylen Jones at 3K is one of my favorite punt plays on the slate because it seems like he's moving into a bit of a timeshare with Reese because he only had 3 less carries a week ago in what was a competitive shootout. All right, moving on. One of the games of the week, Syracuse versus Clemson. 13.5, Kevin. 13.5. No respect for Syracuse. Over-under's at 49.5. Is that disrespectful? Am I crazy? Are you giving Syracuse more respect? What do you think about this line?
Yeah, I think Syracuse actually keeps it pretty close. I think it's probably more like a 6 or a 7-point game. I actually think Syracuse could win. I really like the where like Clemson's secondary isn't great, and I really like the way Gadsden is playing. I think he's a great play. In fact, he's probably my favorite play in this game overall. 6.3. He gets all the targets. Honestly, the only bad game he's had was against Wagner, but they don't need to throw against Wagner. Look at his other last 3 of his last 4. He's been elite. He's been really, really good. And he lit up a decent NC State pass D last week. I was kind of surprised. So he's probably my favorite play in this game. I think they're going to have to throw to keep it to stay with Clemson. So,
yeah, I think the good thing about Syracuse is that where it's coming from, right? They have 3 guys and they're all priced pretty well, to be honest with you. Sean Tucker at 6.9K. He's going to get elite work usage in the running back room. I'm not playing a running back against Clemson. It's that simple, especially when they're that expensive. Garrett Schrader at 6.1K. Normally, I'd recommend a dual threat. I can't do it against Clemson, but at 6.1K, it is a decent price if you want to get a little bit crazy. And then the price on Gadsden, I'm glad you mentioned that. I too thought he was going to get shut down a little bit last week, and he proved me pretty wrong there. So even though Schrader really can't throw the ball well, I think you could play Gadsden in tournaments. Personally, it's going to be very low owned for me on anyone in this game. Clemson's metrics don't look as good as they could. They've had some big D-line injuries. They've been missing, 2 or 3 of their stud defensive linemen who are basically the face of this team. I know everyone wants to talk about DJU, but the defensive line is the identity of this team, and they've been out multiple guys. They're finally returning to health, and I think they're going to be a monster. So that makes it really scary for me to try to play Syracuse there. All right, so looking at Clemson, obviously supposed to have a little bit of success in this one. They had 400 or here. Let me turn it over to you. I'll go to you first. What do you think about Clemson? Any interest against Syracuse?
I really don't like the price. I don't like DJ at 7.4. I definitely don't like Shipley at 6.8. They're just too expensive. So probably not. Honestly, the only guy, and I probably won't even get there, but Antonio Williams, the freshman, he's 5.3. He's been playing a lot of slot. He's been looking good, but again, it's too expensive. There's other guys cheaper. You can play in other games.
Yeah, I can't really get there on Clemson. I don't really know what the angle would be. I guess you think they blow them out, maybe? Like if you think Clemson's going to win 40-3. But even then, it's hard for me to choose between DJU and Shipley. I don't see it. The Syracuse defense has been pretty impressive. They rank 4th in explosiveness, 13th in PPA. I just don't see it. I guess if what you might be seeing is that Syracuse's defensive line is a weakness. That's one thing I had circled going into the year, and that's the only metric that they haven't done super well in. 99th in rushing success rate, 103rd in line yards, and 103rd in stuff rate. That's really not good, considering how good their defense has been as a whole. The issue is, I mean, Clemson's offensive line has also been outside the top 75 in each of those metrics, so it doesn't really make me entirely interested in. One thing I'll say about Syracuse, like if you wanted to get crazy in tournaments, again, I'm not totally advocating for it. They did average 7.1 yards per play last week against a good NC State defense. Like that is a good NC State defense for sure. I believe pretty strongly in that. And it was just a low-paced game. And then Clemson, they allowed 460 yards to Florida State last week. I think that's a comparable offense to Syracuse. I actually think there's a lot of similarities with the dual threat quarterback. 460 yards. I mean, that's kind of getting torched. They played some really bad offenses this year. The only times they played good ones, right? Florida State 460, and then Wake totally burned them on national television, even though they did have some cornerbacks for out for that one. That was a pretty embarrassing showing. And then they played Furman. And they allowed 5.2 yards per play. So they haven't been elite this year. Do they have elite talent? Yes, but they simply have not been elite this year. I think there's some merit if you want to get some leverage playing Syracuse. All right, next game, Iowa versus Ohio State. 30-point spread. Holy Toledo in favor of Ohio State. Over-unders at 49.5. Iowa, tell me about the Iowa stack here, Kevin.
Yeah, we definitely don't even need to waste the time on them. Awful.
They're bad. They're bad. Only player I'll even mention his name, Sam Laporta, tight end, 3.4K. One of the best tight ends in America. Should be trailing in this one. Or at least that the betting line's telling you they're going to be trailing 2 seconds into this one. So I think that's a pretty dang good price if you want to play Laporta. I can kind of see where people are going to have Laporta in their run backs. There's merit to that. There's also merit in Iowa's not a team you run back because their offense is dreadful. They rank bottom 10 in almost every single metric I'm looking at here. They are awful. Yeah. Okay. Ohio State, first in my offensive power ratings. Iowa, second in my defensive power ratings here. First in limiting explosiveness. First in limiting rushing explosiveness. Second in passing success rate. Fourth in passing explosiveness. Just absolutely tremendous metrics across the board. Kevin, does that make you scared at all to play Ohio State this week?
Not really. I mean, they're still going to score. Ohio State's still going to score 40 points. It just, they may not, he may not drop, Stroud may not drop 450 and 4. He may go for 375 and 3. And so it might be a little less, but still they're going to score plenty of points. I don't know that I want anything to do with the Ohio State rushing game because I think both Travion and Meatball are going to play. So I probably don't really want anything there. The interesting calls, obviously, Smith and Jigba. He's supposed to play. He's 7K. I think I want to wait another week. I want to see if he's actually ready to play. I just think I want to wait another week. So honestly, if I'm playing a stack, I'm probably going Stroud and Harrison, and just playing it safe. And you can afford him. So I just want to see more out of Smith and Jigba to see if he's actually healthy. So
yeah, it's obviously important anytime you have Ohio State on the slate, right, Kevin? It could be a deal breaker, any slate they're on. I'm not too enthused with playing any of them. We did see Iowa who was it play who just kind of ran the ball on them? It was Illinois, right? Yeah, Illinois, they just lined up and ran the ball. And like Illinois, they hardly scored, but they ran the ball when they wanted to. They won that game, right? So, on one hand, I could see Ohio State doing that. On the other hand, I mean, that's freaking Illinois, okay? And we're trying to like compare apples to oranges. Ohio
Yeah.
State, I'm not going to say they're going to line up and just run the ball. And with two running backs healthy, that definitely scares me off either of those two. So I'm really not on them this week. And then Stroud at 9.2K, like I don't really see the need. Like, is this really a matchup where he goes for 305? Of course it could be. He can do that on any given day of the week. I think if you're playing 150, you're obviously sprinkling him in. But even then, I'm not really enthused about any of these wide receivers because I think they're going to play four. It sounds like they're all going to play, right? Coming off the bye
Yep.
week. I think Smith and Jigba's finally going to play. And it's hard for me to get there. It's hard for me to get there. I could make a case for Igbuka. I can make a Smith for Smith and Jigba. I can make a case for Harrison. But I tried really hard to find a reason to play one of these guys over the other, and I simply couldn't do it. Right, Igbuka's the most consistent. Harrison is the most explosive. Overall, I think Fleming's still going to be mixing in there in snaps. Who does that hurt? We haven't really seen these four guys really on the field, so we can't accurately predict. Like again, I'm going through all the snap metrics. I'm going through where they're lining up. I could try to make a case for one of these guys over the other, and what I came up with is I think they're all four going to play, and I simply can't do it. So I think they're all fine plays. I'm mostly approaching it as a one-off situation. If you're playing 150 or you're playing multiple lineups, I think you have to throw some Jackson Smith and Jigba in there for the simple reason that there's not really elite players this week. When you look at the wide receiver pool, Kevin, it's really not like great. There's not a lot of guys I'm just dying to have. Like last week, there was, I don't know, 8 to 10 receivers I wanted to jam in there into one lineup. It wasn't possible. This week, it's like, I mean, I guess I could choose 3, but I really don't want to. And even like Marvin Harrison Jr., I'm considering benching him in some of my season-long leagues where I have kind of a stacked receiver lineup. Right? I'm considering benching him in those. So I'm not overly confident in any of these guys. They're 30-point favorites. They're going to score, right? They're probably going to score 35. But are you expecting a blow-up week? Probably not.
No.
All right, moving on. SMU facing Cincinnati. Cincinnati only a 3.5-point favorite. Okay, that's the first time I saw that line, despite somehow writing it down and not processing it. I'm betting Cincinnati. Okay, I think SMU is kind of fraudulent. So I like that line. Over under set at 58.5. Kevin, where are you looking in this matchup?
Well, SMU's rush defense is really, really bad, and Cincinnati, they know how to run the football. So I actually really like McClellan at 6.1 at running back. He had a huge week last week. Now, Corey Kiner didn't play. I think Corey Kiner is going to play, which is fine. I think McClellan's the better back. I think he's proven he's a better back. And I think he gets 20 carries and he goes, 100 and 120 and 2 and easily, returns a really good value. So he's my play in this game, especially on the Cincy side. I like McClellan a lot.
Yeah, I do. I think SMU's been fraudulent for like 5 years in a row now. They put up some pretty stats. People like them. And then when they play actual teams, they just get kind of torched. And I think Cincinnati's still an actual team. They're not a playoff contender, but they look better in every single one of my metrics here. And yeah, SMU can't stop the rush. 112th in PPA per play, 112th in rushing explosiveness, 123rd in passing explosiveness. They can't stop a thing, in my opinion. I think they're piss poor defensively. I don't really trust what they're doing defensively there. In their system, I don't really see anything to believe in the coaching staff. They're 110th in havoc, so they don't even cause havoc. 116th in stuff rate. It's all extremely negative for me. Corey Kiner being in this week really does complicate it for me. I do think McClellan has been the better back, but I think Kiner is probably the better back in the long run. He just hasn't really been healthy this year, and he's a bruising back. So bruising back not being healthy is not a good recipe for success at all. So I think you can play either one of these guys. I guess the interesting news here is Ben Bryant at quarterback. For some reason, DraftKings still has the out tag listed on him. So I guess if you want to get some leverage, people might think he's not playing when he actually is because Luke Fickell called him hopeful. So it sounds like Ben Bryant's going there and they should be ready to go, which I'm just going to have to keep waiting for Evan Prater, aren't I, Kevin? I really want to play Prater. I can't do it right now.
Nope.
One of these days. And it sounds like Tyler Scott, their wide receiver, they're expecting him back. It looks like DraftKings hasn't caught on to that one. But when I was searching him up a couple days ago, it sounded like they're hopeful Tyler Scott's going to return. Are you going to get there in the passing game at all?
Probably not. I think if I'm going to attack this game, it's going to be through the rush, not the pass.
Definitely agree with you. All right, looking at SMU. Tanner Mordecai, he's always a threat to go off. Rashee Rice, one of the most targeted wide receivers in the entire country. Are we going to get there here?
I'm not. I mean, obviously, I think they're both fine plays. Rice, just on the sheer amount of targets he gets. I think Tanner Mordecai stinks. I just think he's not a very good quarterback. And I think Cincinnati will, pose some challenges. So at their price, I'd rather play other guys in that range. So I won't get there. I don't think I'll play any SMU guys.
Yeah, I think the story of the American is basically right. What is Cincinnati going to continue dominating, or is their defense going to take a step back? Because losing that many guys to the NFL for an American school, I would expect them to take a step back. And while they get a stiff test here in SMU for sure, I mean, Cincinnati's been really, really good. I don't really see why I wouldn't believe in them at this point or in the coaching staff. I mean, Luke Fickell should be coaching at a Power 5 job. It seems pretty obvious, right, Kevin? Like he should be coaching at a big time program.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind him in Lincoln, that's for sure.
Hell yeah, I wouldn't mind him in South Bend. Oh my God. Well, I don't know. So here's what I'll say. Here's what Cincinnati is top 10 in: success rate, PPA per play, standard downs PPA, standard down success rate, rushing PPA, havoc, and then they're number 1 in the country in havoc from their front 7. So yeah, I think they're going to eat SMU up here. I'm not really interested. Of course, Rashee Rice, where I said there's not really any huge pay up options this week. I guess you could play Rashee Rice as someone who's going to get targeted a million times for a team that I think is going to be playing from behind at home against a Cincinnati team that no longer has a Sauce Gardner. Okay. UNLV versus Notre Dame. Wow. Looks like Cam Friel is going to be playing quarterback here in this one. Unless we get some Doug Brumfield news, we hadn't had it. He's been in concussion protocol for a long time now. Still don't have any news. I'm not really sure it matters. Nobody's going to be playing him. They are 27-point underdogs in South Bend, total of 47. Not like Notre Dame's ever lost as a double-digit underdog this year, right, Kevin? Yeah.
Yeah. This game's kind of brutal.
It's happened 10 times this year. Double-digit underdog. Or I think it's over 14 points, losing at home. It's happened 10 times. Notre Dame's, it's already happened twice to them. So, holy Toledo. I really don't want to watch this one. Definitely don't want to play anyone. UNLV also is banged up. Their quarterback could be out for this one for the 3rd straight game. Kyle Williams, their receiver, has been out. And then Jeff Weimer, their 3rd receiver, has been out. And now Aiden Robbins left with a knee injury, their running back who they're feeding carries. So UNLV is super banged up. We can skip them against a good Notre Dame defense. On the other side, Notre Dame. Tell me about the Notre Dame stat, Kevin.
Well, I actually, excuse me, I actually liked Pine last week, and you saw how that turned out. So that wasn't so good. But I mean, he should be able to have some success against a bad UNLV team. Mayer, again, he's a stud. I kind of liked him last week, and that didn't turn out so well. But he gets a ton of targets. So at his price, he's got to be in play. I don't think he'll be highly owned, which is good. So if I'm going anywhere, I might do a cheap Pine Mayer stack. But again, I tried that last week and it didn't work out so well. So running back wise, they run 3 guys. S-Team, I think, is the best as far as, speed and power. But again, they run 3 guys. So pick flip a coin.
Before I get into these plays, and there's not many, it's Notre Dame. Let me just talk about this a little bit. Brian Kelly was 30-1 at Notre Dame Stadium dating back to 2017. 30-1 at home. 30-1.
Yeah.
Then we turn to Marcus Freeman, who's already lost to Marshall and Stanford as 3-score favorites in the first half of his first season. Oh my word. How have we fallen this far? First Notre Dame coach in history to start 0-3. You can send me the Tommy Rees hate. I get it. I'm not the biggest Tommy Rees guy either, but I mean, let's be real here. Oh my God, this is pathetic. And I've always been a guy that Marcus Freeman, we're going to have to wait a while until we see the true product, because he's brought in to be a recruiting guy and a relationship guy. And he was never supposed to start this early, but Brian Kelly's an a-hole who left them kind of in a hole in the recruiting process. But I mean, I don't know. I guess I'll wait until we get the stories about whether we actually tried to go after a guy like Luke Fickell or not. But when I see Luke Fickell out there still coaching up a top 5, top 10 defense after everything they lost, and then And then I'm seeing what real losing looks like at Notre Dame. It makes me a little upset here. So other than that, I think Mayer is a fine play at 5K. I am at this point totally convinced the receiving options are absolute garbage. Lorenzo Styles could not catch anything. He was wide open on the third down that they actually could have won the game, bounced right off his hands. Looked like he didn't even care. It's just another drop, in his long history of drops. So who cares? I'm done with this team. They run 3 running backs. Their quarterback should be a backup. He's like 5'9". Who cares? Mayer is the only player worth knowing on this team. All right, let's cheer up. Let's talk about West Virginia football, baby. 6.5-point underdogs on the road, playing against Texas Tech. Over-unders at 64.5. So, of course, we're interested in this one. The Big 12, Kevin, is the Big 12 back? We've been seeing the shootouts. Is the Big 12 back?
I think so. I think we can say it. I think they've, the Pac-12 doesn't shoot out anymore. Big 10, not really. Honestly, the 2 shootout conferences right now are the Big 12 and the AAC or ACC, right? So, yeah.
We play in West Virginia. JT Daniels, favorable matchup.
I'm not playing JT Daniels anytime. He came in with some hype, obviously, but he just doesn't do anything. It's just not worth it. Prater's been coming on at receiver. He had a big game last week. I just don't know, because the week you play Prater is the week that Bryce Ford Wheaton blows up. So it's hard. It's hard to know where they're going to get their points from. And I think Mathis' game last week, I'm just not trusting that. So I don't know that I'll have much West Virginia exposure, even though obviously they're going to score some points. Again, it's just hard. It's hard to find that path for me.
All right, I'm going to go on a brief history lesson. I'm not really sure it has a point, but it's the tangent I'm going to go down because it's a little difficult to figure out what's going on in Morgantown right now. Because it seems like they should have some good fantasy options, and instead we're sitting here saying, like, I'm not really sure I want any at 64.5 total. That's kind of crazy, right? So their offensive coordinator is Graham Harrell. He came from USC, and before that, he was at North Texas, and he was a very interesting offensive coordinator for a while. Of course, we know he came from Texas Tech, so kind of a funny little revenge game here, where he's a record-breaking quarterback, of course, in the air raid. At North Texas, he was interesting because he was kind of running a version of the air raid that we didn't see a lot in the country at this time. Nowadays, we see it everywhere, where it's an air raid where they still have a version of the power running game, right? And it was really awesome at North Texas. It made me the biggest Graham Harrell fan in the world. I totally overrated him at USC, and he put some good offenses together at USC. Don't get me wrong, right? But it kind of got stale after a certain point. It was like, okay, you're the air raid guy who tries to run it, and it just seemed like they never really knew when they were running the ball or why they were running the ball. It was just like a pretty interesting air raid offense that had guys like, I don't know, Michael Pittman, Amon-Ra St. Brown. You play NFL DFS. Yes, these guys were on the same team, right? They just had NFL guys. And it was never totally as functional as it should be, Kevin, especially when you're USC and you're getting these 5-star guys. So I kind of like totally soured on Graham Harrell towards the end of his USC career, and actually kind of viewed him as like he was underperforming because they should have been averaging 50 points a game, to be completely honest, in the Pac-12. But now he's in Morgantown, and it's kind of working. And the power run game is back. They got like 3 guys. They ran all over Baylor, who no one can run on Baylor, right? BYU can't run on Baylor, and they have 360-pound offensive linemen. They're all 6'5", and they can't run on them. But somehow West Virginia, this power run game in the air raid's running. Sounds like CJ Donaldson's going to be back this week. It sounds like he's going to play. That makes me a little nervous considering how severe that concussion was a couple of weeks ago. But they seem like he's going to play. Tony Mathis is probably still going to be listed as the starter after going absolutely bonkers. I think I have to consider these running backs, Kevin. Are you going to consider them?
I probably won't. I mean, I can see getting there. They don't make my pool this week. There's 4 or 5 other running backs that I'd rather play that I think have a clearer path to, fantasy goodness, but we'll see.
It's definitely not a clear path. And I agree with your shout out on Prather. I think 5.8 is a great price. I'm actually a huge Prather fan. This kid's 6'4" and runs probably a 4'4" at least 40 time. I think he's very talented. He's a true sophomore. He's been involved since he was a true freshman. Every single encouraging signs you want to see. And then the air raid where targets are not consistent, he's been consistently getting targets. I think he's the best wide receiver in the room, certainly the most talented. 6 catches, 6 catches, 6 catches, 8 catches, 8 catches. I love it. I think he has home run speed. I love me some Caden Prather. At 5.8K, pretty good. All right, looking at Texas Tech, They said they might play 3 quarterbacks this week, Kevin. Does that scare you off the situation?
It does. It actually really pisses me off. It's really, really annoying. Earlier in the week, I had Morton. You can fit him in everything, and he just makes lineups look really, really nice. But what the hell if the Texas Tech mindset is we're going to play three quarterbacks, keep it. I don't want it. If you have 2 quarterbacks, you don't have a quarterback. If you have 3 quarterbacks, you certainly don't have a quarterback. So I'm scared off it. Unfortunately, I don't want to be, but I am.
So I have a hot take on this one, Kevin.
All right.
And just keep in mind, listeners, this is not rooted in factual reporting. Okay. This is just my hot take. This was my feel on the situation. Texas Tech has been saying they're going to play multiple quarterbacks before every single game this year. How often have they actually done it? Almost never, like once or twice. They said they were going to play Donovan Smith the other week, or he was banged up or whatever. Like the fantasy accounts were all tweeting out that he wasn't dressed for the game. And I'm like, you definitely didn't even read the report, because they said he's dressed to play and they could use him in emergency basis. And even like Prize Picks already graded him as a DNP. I'm like, he's not a DNP. He's literally dressed. And then, of course, he took a wide receiver snap. So, yeah, they played multiple quarterbacks because they played him for 1 snap and put him out wide. I think they would be crazy to play Donovan Smith. It sounds like he's ready to go, but he's dealing with some sort of upper body injury. I think it's a shoulder, and he's also dealing with a knee injury. And to be frank, Donovan Smith is no good. I think the fan base would turn on them if they did play Donovan Smith at quarterback. It won't mean they shouldn't, but Baron Morton's the guy, man. This should be the guy of the future. The only thing that throws a wrench in it is if Tyler Shuck is healthy. I have my serious doubts if Tyler Shuck was healthy. The original timetable that the beat writers were giving is that is a potential return for October 29th, which would be next week's game. This is October 22nd. So I get he's practicing, sort of, but he finally just got back to 7-on-7. I haven't seen anything that he's cleared, like really cleared to go for game action. I think if I get news that Tyler Shuck is not playing, I'm gonna load up on Baron Morton. I'm still gonna play him in tournaments. I get that it's dicey. I get it. They might choose to play Donovan Smith for some unknown reason, but we finally saw Baron Morton play, and I thought they looked pretty good against Oklahoma State. This kid threw 62 pass attempts. I think Zach Kitley likes him. This kid can run a little bit, and West Virginia's defense has been absolutely god awful. They rank 110th in PPA, 117th in success rate. They graduated their top 5 secondary guys from a year ago, and the new guys stink. They rank 124th in passing success rate. PFF has them 125th in coverage grade. I think they're going to get absolutely torched through the air. I think even if Baron Morton even plays a half game at 6.8K, he's probably still going to throw for 300 yards and a couple of touchdowns. So I'm not letting it scare me off, even though I could be totally crazy for doing that. I think it's just gamesmanship. Wide receivers, Kevin. It's been a mess all year.
Yeah. The interesting thing is Bradley actually had a good game last week with Morton in there. So if he's going to throw to him, I like him at his price. Xavier White, I like too, but I just don't know if Miles Price is going to play. I don't think he's going to, but I don't know. What's your take? You think he's going to play?
I think it's a difficult take. I do think he's going to play, but like, I'll go back to what the coaches said after he first got injured. They said they were just glad it wasn't broken.
Yeah.
So I know they had a bye week, but this is, that's only missing 2 games for an injury that was described as it's just not broken. How I'm guessing this is going to go, and again, there's no reporting on this. I think he's going to play, but they're already rotating wide receiver snaps. Like when he was out, they were just totally rotating guys. Like they didn't even leave Xavier White. Like he had 5 targets, I think, on the first drive, and then he sat like the 3 drives after that. So I think if he does play, they're just going to rotate him in the slot. And if he doesn't play, then I think Xavier White is an absolutely fantastic play at 4.4K. But even then, you have to be wary that he's not going to play a full allotment of slots.
Yep.
Do you know who actually led the team in targets? Well, actually tied with the last 3 weeks. Who's tied for their team lead?
Was it Cleveland?
It's Cleveland.
Yeah.
He's earned a full-time outside role, had 100 yards last week. Still hasn't caught a touchdown, but it's coming. All right. Looking at Ole Miss versus LSU. Ole Miss is now 7-0 for the second time in 50 years. Yet they are not even favored in this one. 2.5 points for LSU in Baton Rouge. Over-unders at 66.5. So this seems like it should be fantasy goodness, but I'm not sure it is. Where are you starting your handicap here?
Again, this one's kind of tough because LCD is not bad. They're pretty good. Jackson Dart, he's actually had 2 really good games in a row. He's had over 30 DraftKings points the past 2 weeks. I could see him doing something, and I could also see him just having a dud. So I don't know. Obviously, we all love Judkins. Dude, kid is a beast. But again, that LCD isn't bad. So I don't know where to go on Ole Miss. I don't know that I'll have a ton of exposure. I might have a little exposure to Judkins, and I might have a throw a dart with Dart once, but I don't think I'll have a ton. Again, it's one of those games where they're probably going to score 35 points, but where's it going to come from? There's not a lot of trusted sources. And why is LSU favored? It stinks a little bit to me. Stinks.
It does stink, and LSU's been kind of like undervalued to start the year. Like they had some weird lines on them. Like even going back to the Florida State game, I think Florida State was favored by like over a field goal, and I think they ended up covering. But like it obviously, it doesn't make any sense to me either. In a game where there's a lot of uncertainties, there's a high over under total. You have 2 untrustworthy dual threat quarterbacks that used to play in the Pac-12, right? The one thing I think I know is that Ole Miss is going to run the ball. I think they're going to run the ball well. That's the one thing I know. Even Jackson Dart has eclipsed 115 rushing yards twice this year. I tried to tell everyone I think he's a better rushing threat than you guys realize because he was playing with an injured knee as a true freshman at USC. But anyway, so now that adds that to the element. They're 3rd nationally in rushing yards at 271 yards per game. And they lead the country with 24 rushing touchdowns. So I don't think there's any reason to get off the well here when, their prices haven't really jumped at all. So it opened Ole Miss -2.5, and it quickly moves down to -1, and now on LSU's favor all the way. That's a huge point. Yeah, I think we might get some news here in this one, so stay tuned on that one. But LSU's defense, like, I think we're overvaluing LSU's defense. I still have my questions. Last week they gave up 6.3 yards per play to Auburn. 6.5 yards per play before that to Tennessee, which it's Tennessee, okay. And then 6.7 against Florida. Or was it Florida they played last week? But those are the last 3 opponents. They all averaged over 6.3 yards per play. And 2 of those are not good offenses, in my opinion. They allowed 263 rushing yards to Tennessee, 210 to Florida. I think those 2 teams are comparable to Ole Miss. With the notable exception that Ole Miss is better than both of those teams and is better running the ball than both those teams and has 2 better running backs than either one of those teams has. So I think you can line Judkins up. I think you can line Zach Evans up. I'm always a Zach Evans believer in tournaments because, I think by now everyone realizes Judkins is an absolute monster. But I think Evans is as well. So overall, I'm looking at those running backs. All right, so let's turn our attention to LSU. Any interest here for LSU?
I'm certainly not going to pay for Daniels at that price, especially since he dropped like a 50 burger last week. There's no way in hell he's doing it 2 weeks in a row. Booty's actually coming on a bit. I don't mind him at 5.3. I think he's had 6 catches in each of his last 2 games. So I don't mind Booty at 5.3. He's got to do something. He's got to bump up that draft stock. He's got to do something because he's been dreadful. Beginning of the year, and some people were questioning his heart, which didn't. So I don't mind him there. A punt play at he's 3K. Where is he? Yeah, the running back Williams. He went over 100 yards last week, and he's min price. He gets carries, so I don't mind him. If you want a minimum price guy.
I think he's the best min-priced option. There was really good min-priced options the first couple weeks. Now there's hardly any. I think he's by far the best this week. I don't know why he's min-priced. It's been 3 weeks in a row he's been getting carries. He's still min-priced. The one thing I would be concerned about, Kevin, is if Armani Goodwin plays, because he's been out and he looked really impressive early in the year. It sounds like he's practicing, and it sounds like he's probably going to play. So that means they do have 4 running backs that get carries against an LSU defense that is supposed to be pretty good, 29th in rushing PPA, 29th overall in PPA as well. So, but still, he's min-priced and he shouldn't be. The only game where he didn't get carries was against Tennessee when they were getting blown out. And he still got, 7 carries and 2 receptions. And that one still had 10 fantasy points, right? So yeah. I think overall, I agree with you. I think you could play Butte in tournaments at 5.3 because he's electric. I think this Ole Miss defense is overrated. I was talking pretty highly about them early in the year, but the more I look at it, teams that have any sort of pulse, and even ones that don't, Auburn, have been able to move the ball on them. Tulsa had 457 yards against them, which, come on. And then Auburn came back from the dead last week, 6.8 yards per play to a lifeless Auburn team with a deadbeat coach. I don't know what that's all about. Even Vanderbilt had 400 yards on this offense. So I think their numbers are buoyed against playing some really bad defense, really bad offenses like Troy, Georgia Tech, and then some other crappy team. They played 3 really bad teams. So I actually think both teams could move the ball. And that leaves me with Williams and Butte being potential targets. All right, let's turn our attention to a game that all the casuals are probably going to own in all their lineups, and one that everyone should have ownership interest in, quite frankly, because there is a total of 70.5. Chip Kelly returning to Eugene. Oregon is a 6-point favorite at home. Kevin, where are you starting your handicap?
Well, if you're looking at UCLA, you got to be interested in DTR. He's been really good. Again, I think he's a terrible quarterback, but that said, he's been really good fantasy-wise. 38, 33 the past 2 weeks. Oregon's D, if you're going to attack them, actually they're worse against the pass. So I'm good with DTR. Obviously, I don't mind Charbonnet either at his price. Again, he just puts up numbers and his price doesn't go up. So, I can see some Charbonnet. I don't really want any Bobo. So if I'm playing DTR, I'm playing him naked and, just counting on him throwing a little bit and running a little bit. The only thing that scares me a little bit, and maybe it won't even be anything, but they're calling for some weather, some rain in Eugene, but some people say it doesn't rain there. So we'll see. But I think DTR, definitely has some interest.
Yeah, it doesn't rain in Austin Stadium is the refrain. So we'll see. Yeah, check the weather Saturday morning. Right now, I'm not giving credence to it just because there's a total of 70.5, right? I think you hit it on the head. I mean, UCLA guys are too cheap. Like I said it when they played Utah. And he was a fantastic tournament play. I ended up putting him in the afternoon slate, and I took down that one with the Ohio State stack. And then, he wasn't even that owned.
Yep.
I'm like, he's a Chip Kelly running back at 6.8K. I do think the Oregon defense is pretty good against the rush. I feel pretty strongly about that. Brandon Dorless and I think it's Devin Williams. Their 2 DNs are both run stuffers. They're not really havoc guys. They're run stuffers. And then they have 2 of the best linebackers in college football, in my opinion, at least 2 of the most talented, Noah Sewell and Justin Flo. So I think that's what they clearly specialize at. But even looking at their advanced metrics, the advanced metrics absolutely hate Oregon's defense, and they've been kind of blowing teams out. So I decided to take a closer look at Oregon's defense, even though I watch every game, and they certainly aren't trustworthy. And going against a veteran team like UCLA, I think you can forecast success here. UCLA is averaging just over 505 yards per game. They're 3.7 yards per rush is what Oregon's allowing, and that's why I think they have a pretty good rush defense. But those numbers are boosted by Georgia's 5.3 yards per rush and 4 total touchdowns in that game. Other than that, they've been really stout against the rush. UCLA did run for 200 against Utah in what could be a comparable matchup. But quite frankly, I feel pretty strongly Oregon has a much better rush defense than Utah. Utah's defense is a liability. We've seen it week in and week out. It's just not the team they were a year ago, quite frankly. And Oregon's pass defense is not good. So if you're going to make the case for Charbonnet, it's a 70.5 total, but I definitely don't like the matchup. But he's a Chip Kelly running back at the end of the day, right? BYU completed 70% of their passes against the Ducks. Washington State completed 77% of those passes. Both of those teams threw for over 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. So Dorian Thompson-Robinson, I think playing him naked at 7.9K, I'm actually definitely considering it in this matchup. If it's absolutely pouring, I'll probably find a way off of it. But otherwise, I'm going to load him up a little bit. All right. Where are we looking at Oregon? Bo Nix, the price king. You all about it?
I think you still have to play him. And again, he's another guy that I'm going to play naked. I'm just going to just ride with Bo. He's probably going to combine for 5 total touchdowns and, 350 total yards, 400 total yards. He's been really good. I mean, really good. Like something I never thought I'd say about Bo freaking Nix, but he actually looks like a quarterback, and he's over 35 DraftKings points every week. So Yeah, but especially with the implied total points, sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to tell you not to play Bo Nix. I personally am not going to play Bo Nix this week. Um, I can still make a very strong case for him. It's probably just the price for me, right?
Yeah,
I think it's a favorable matchup. Like, I'm not a believer in UCLA's defense. I think they've had a very soft schedule, and they still rank 99th in standard down success rate. So ranking that poorly is a big concern to me. I thought they were going to be bad defensively going into the year because they lost pretty much everything, and they just duct tape things together in the transfer portal. And you're like, oh, well, every team gets a lot of guys in the transfer portals, what everyone's thinking right now. But if you actually look at the guys they got, most of them were like G5 guys. They got guys from Wyoming, right? The two best players they got are the Murphy brothers on the defensive line from North Texas. Those guys are actually legit. If you watch the game, watch them in this one. But I mean, it's Bo Nix at home. By now, everyone knows the Bo Nix splits. He's way better at home. This is a favorable matchup. Oregon has one of the most veteran and best offensive lines in the entire country, going against a UCLA defense that ranks outside the top 80 in every single one of my metrics. I think Oregon's going to have success here. I actually think Oregon's going to run the ball a lot in this one. I think they're going to have a lot of success as well. The issue is, of course, they use too many running backs. So I think Bucky Irving could be a play at 5.5K. It's a decent price, but they're still going to mix in dollars. They're still going to mix in Whittington at 4K if you really want to pay down. But again, if you're not sure the guy's going to get more than 6 or 7 carries, it's really hard to do. Byron Cardwell at this point, I don't expect him to play anytime soon. I'm hearing some weird quotes about him. He's been warming up like every single game and hasn't given it a go. So overall, I think that's fine. And then Troy Franklin is the one wide receiver I would consider. Because this Oregon offense, I'm just going to say it, they've been absolutely amazing. Second in success rate overall. They've been great rushing the ball. First in the entire country in rushing PPA and rushing success rate. They even ran the ball a little bit against Georgia. They were just in such a deep hole they didn't have to. And they're third in passing success rate. They're doing everything well. I just don't think it's a blow up game for the wide receivers. If Franklin was priced in the fives, like he was to start the year, I'd be all about it. But not here. All right, to turn our Texas to Freudian slip. Turn our attention to Texas there. 6 points spread in favor of Texas. Over-unders at 60.5. Does that seem low to you, Kevin? 60.5?
Yeah, I think it's going to be high 60s. Oklahoma State can't stop the pass. They just can't stop the pass. So fire up the mullet this week, baby. Fire up the mullet. He's got a really good price. He doesn't bring anything to the table rushing wise, which we know, but I think he throws for 350 and 4 in this one, and I'm going to have a lot of viewers to Worthy combos. They seem like they're on the same page now. They seem like Worthy's, he's getting a lot of targets, and his price doesn't move. He's still 6.1. He just doesn't move. So I think that's a really nice stack to have in this game. Oklahoma State, obviously they can stop the run. Bijan's a play no matter what, but I probably won't get there price wise. I think I'm going to attack with yours and Worthy as a stack.
Yeah, I think if you're only playing one lineup this week, or even if you're playing multiple, then I will be. Where I'm starting most of my lineups is with Quinn Ewers and Xavier Worthy. I think it's fairly simple. Worthy's ownership has been non-existent. People don't want to play Worthy, even though no one owns him. I ended up not having as much of him as I wanted to last week, even though I said he was a very strong play, even though I firmly believe. I somehow just ended up with not much of him when he's 5.7K. Yep. I had a ton of him against West Virginia when he's 6.4K, had 40 fantasy points. No one is owning the guy. I don't know what touts are out there thinking Worthy sucks. He had an injury early on in the year, and they were playing with Hudson Card early on in the year. It just seems, quite frankly, in the right matchups, he's going to blow up. I think this is the matchup. This is a huge game for Texas, right? To prove that they're, going to be back in it. I almost said Texas is back there, right? Oklahoma State's defense sucks this year. And Mike Gundy's pretty clear about that in press conferences. He's pretty much saying, paraphrasing, we have a young defense. What do you expect, right? They lost everything to the NFL. They can't replace them. They have a bunch of, underclassmen up there. And their pass defense is dreadful, man. Just absolutely dreadful. 93rd in passing PPA, 106th in passing explosiveness. Xavier Worthy is the definition of an explosive player. Quinn Ewers at 6.4K is a joke of a price. He should be at least, 7.6K? Yeah. I'm all about that this week. Jatavian Sanders, the tight end, they refused to price this guy anywhere. Had a dud last week, but you can see there a dud at 6.7K. He's already had 3 games with above 20 points. He's the second best receiver on this team because Jordan Whittington is just a guy. Jag, I believe is what you call them. Although I say hang jag because then you have to say a jag, and then just a guy doesn't make sense. Anyway, Bijan Robinson, 9.4K, price king at running back, has been an absolute monster. Are you paying up for Bijan Robinson this week, Kevin?
No, it's just too high a price. The running backs I actually like this week are in that 6K range. So I'd rather run with 2 or 3 of those guys as opposed to paying up for Bijan.
Yeah, I mean, I might get there. But again, I think the priorities here in the cheaper passing game, right? So, all right, Oklahoma State's Spencer Sanders. Of course, the news of the week is he's banged up. Is he going to play? I don't know. Well, he did play, and he looked good for a quarter, and then they didn't score. They had what 24 points with 10 minutes remaining in the second quarter, and they didn't score another touchdown after that until overtime. Sounds like he's banged up yet again, but he should play. Jaden Bray is perpetually banged up, came back, played a few games, then did not play again last week. So who knows what's going on there? None of the receivers have popped. The running game has not popped. Dominic Richardson's averaging only 3.3 yards per carry in Big 12 play. And now, I never thought I'd say this, but they are playing what is a very tough Texas defense. They've actually been very solid. 14th in standard down success rate, 7th in rushing success rate. They've just been pretty solid. With an over-under of 60, Kevin, do you think you're still going to get there on Oklahoma State?
I don't think I'm going to play any Oklahoma State guys. As you said, it's not worth it. So no, I don't think I'll have any Cowboys this week.
Yeah, I don't think I am either. I wrote up this game for covers.com. Go ahead and check out the article, but I think Texas rolls them, to be honest with you. I think they're better in pretty much every single area of the game.
Yep.
Like Oklahoma State, I like Oklahoma State. I'll stand up for Gundy, but they just haven't been impressive. Like they were outgained by almost, I think it was 80 yards in their win against Baylor. They were outgained the next week. They were outgained by 120 yards against TCU and barely scored a point, right? From 10 minutes in the second quarter. I just think it's fallen apart and they're banged up. The quarterback's banged up. I think that's a big deal. All right, Boston College versus Wake. Please don't watch a second of this game because that means you'll have to watch Boston College, which has been brutal. But they are playing a Wake defense that is prone to giving up some big fantasy points on the other side. So, Kevin, make a case for one of these BC players. I think I know who it's going to be.
Well, yeah, it's the one everyone's going to play, right? Zay Flowers at 5.9. He's their offense. He's their best player by far. He's had some really good games. Wake, as you said, doesn't play much D. The problem is, especially in tournaments, he's going to be really highly owned. I think he's a great cash play, but in tournaments, he's going to be his ownership percentage is going to be high, I would think.
I would think too, you never really know in college. Like some people might just look at this and say Boston College sucks. Some people might have their spreadsheets, right? Like I'm looking at 125th in passing success rate for Boston College. Maybe they look at that. Maybe they look at the fact they're the third worst team in success rate in the whole country, and maybe they just overlook him. I don't know. But yeah, I think he's a great play. Great play. Wake Forest. Pricing's tough this week, Kevin. They're priced way up. You still going to get there?
I don't think I will. I'm not going to pay 8.9 for Hartman, especially in a game where this is one of those games where BC's really bad. They could have two running backs score 2 touchdowns each, and Hartman has 250 and 3, and it just doesn't pan out. So I'm probably not going to get there. A.T. Perry's been good. He started off the year really bad, and the past 3 weeks he's been really good. But again, he's pretty pricey. I don't want to pay that kind of price for him. So I'm probably not going to have much Wake exposure.
Yeah, they're fine. I mean, I'll probably play a little Perry just because there's not good pay up options, right? But I think he's by far the most interesting option in the passing game because the other guys they've been rotating, right? They're still rotating in Banks and Green. Their 3 best receivers are outside receivers, which is a little awkward, but Perry's the guy. He's the most targeted, right? He's the best, and he's the best red zone threat, best deep threat, etc. And then Morin in the slot. Boston College is not a good football team whatsoever, not even close to a good football team. But the strength of their team for 2 years has been in the secondary. So there's that. And then, yeah, if Wake Forest has a big lead, they're not guaranteed to put up huge numbers. So I think they're fine, but not a smash play for me this week. All right, let's turn it over to Purdue versus Wisconsin. Wisconsin favored by 2.5. Interesting. I guess that loss to Michigan State and the firing of the coach before that really got the betting market excited about the Badgers here. I guess Wisconsin being on a 15-game winning streak against Purdue is noteworthy in this one. However, Purdue, they just keep winning. I'm not really sure how they're winning. But they're looking to finish October with a perfect 4-0 record, Kevin. They already have wins over Minnesota, Maryland, and Nebraska, and now they just need to beat Wisconsin. This is an ugly DFS game. What are we looking at?
It is ugly. I think you still have to have some interest in O'Connell because, dude, he's 5.8 or 6K every week. He never goes above, and he's pretty good. And fantasy wise, he's pretty good. So for 6K, I think he's certainly worth a look. And he's never owned. Nobody ever owns him either. So Charlie Jones is banged up from what they say. I watched that game last week. Even though he's banged up, he's still had like 18 targets. So we'll see. I don't know that I'll get there on his price, though. His price is pretty high. So I could see just playing O'Connell as a super flex alone. Maccabee has been really good at running back, but even though Wisconsin is down for their standards, I still don't want to play running backs against them. So I'm probably not going to have any exposure. So for me, it might be a one-off with O'Connell.
Yeah, I think you hit it well. They just refuse to price O'Connell. It's like whatever that religious theory is, pardon me for not knowing, where they said God created the universe and now he's just dead and he's not watching over it. That's what the DFS algo is doing here with O'Connell. Yeah, I'm surprised it took people so long to realize Charlie Jones is banged up. They finally have a note up on DraftKings. I don't know. I was saying that. I was watching that one game where he didn't do anything against Maryland. He was quite clearly injured on the first drive, like visibly hobbled. Didn't look like he would come back. And then he came back and did nothing. All right. Or maybe that was the Minnesota game. Yeah. And he did nothing. Yeah. And then next week he did nothing. So he's quite clearly not healthy, but you can see there, he put up 40 points last week. Nebraska is Nebraska and Wisconsin is Wisconsin. Yeah. By the way, I just want to say I pride myself on being the only first adopter of Devin McCoby, redshirt freshman running back for Purdue. I like that kid, but definitely not against a Jim Leonard defense. Okay, Wisconsin, it's this simple here. Is it a Braylon Allen week, Kevin?
I've played him the past couple weeks, and he's been good. I don't think I'm going to play him this week. Purdue's rush defense is actually pretty good. I seem to watch them a lot, and they just don't give up a lot of huge plays. So I'm probably not going to play the Hulk. I love the Hulk, but I'm probably not going to play him.
Yeah, it's a good price. I'm not totally enthused. Difficult matchup, right? Purdue 16th in rushing PPA, 26th rushing success rate, 8th in rushing explosiveness, which is probably the key metric in this one. But I mean, I don't know. Some of these metrics, man, like Kevin last week, like everyone's saying Penn State's got a top 5 rush defense because they did by all accounts. And they play Michigan and you see what happens. Sometimes you just get big boys sometimes. Like sometimes It's that simple. You can sit here with your spreadsheets and your analysis and your whatever. Sometimes you just get big boyed, and it's Wisconsin. So they could big boy him here, I suppose. And 7.4K for an elite running back. Definitely going to be in my player pool. I don't love it because he doesn't catch passes, right? And Purdue's a tough matchup, but yeah. All right, moving on. We have 2 American games after the SMU one. Memphis versus Tulane. Tulane is ranked number 25. They are a 7-point favorite. That win over Kansas State is looking better by the week as well. I do like Kansas State against TCU this week, by the way, for what it's worth. That is a bet I'll be on. But Tulane, 7-point favorite, over-unders at 55.5. So this one's just kind of perfectly in that middle range where you're not drawn to it because the total's average, the spread is average, and these teams' metrics are fairly average. So what are you looking at in this matchup, Kevin?
I won't have any Memphis exposure. They don't move the needle. Spears is really good for Tulane at running back, and he's got a good price. So I could see playing some Spears. I don't know about Pratt. So he's had 2 really good games in a row, but I just don't think he throws very well. But then when you say that, Memphis is like 115th against the pass. So Memphis doesn't stop the pass very well. So I could see some Pratt exposure at 6.3. I think he's going to be low owned, so I think he's a good tournament play. It could be a decent tournament shot.
I think you hit it well. I'm not a believer in Memphis. I think they've been heading in the wrong direction for a while, and people are still giving them credit because some people, I don't know, don't watch Group of Five football unless they're in, what was it, the Peach Bowl against Penn State when Journey Brown went crazy, and that's still what they think Memphis is. And I just don't think Memphis is that good anymore, and the metrics say they're not good anywhere anymore. And Tulane has, outside of Cincinnati, probably the best defense in all the Group of Five. I mean, I don't know what happened, Kevin. I haven't had time to digest it because they were bad defensively a year ago, like downright bad. This was a bad team overall. They're flat out good. Like, I'm a believer. Yep. They're good on all levels. I agree. I think Pratt and Spears are both fine. I think Pratt and Turney's, I get it. The passing volume, you never know how much they're going to pass the ball, right? I think in this matchup against a Memphis team that is bad against the pass. It's simple. Yeah. They're bad. 96 in passing PPA, 114th in passing success rate. And Pratt can run around a little bit too. Does have 3 rushing touchdowns over the last 3 weeks, which is kind of buoying his stat line. But I mean, he's a guy who likes to take off. You can see their rushing attempts, right? He has over 40 rushing attempts in his last 4 games. So well over that. So I think Pratt, like, 100% is going to be in my player pool. Tyjae Spears, it's just a great price. You know, I don't love the matchup against the Memphis team that I think defending the rush is actually the thing they probably do best. 48th in success rate. So that's telling you they're barely top 50. And that's the thing they do best as a team, in my opinion. But he's really involved in the receiving game sometimes. Didn't have a reception a week ago, but has had some really big receiving games. I think this kid is a really dynamic talent at 5.7K. I think he's definitely has to be in your player pool as well. Tulane wide receivers, don't play them because they rotate a bunch of them and none of them are trustworthy. So unless you're looking for a total tournament dart, just close your eyes and press a button. All right. Save the best for last, Kevin. Pac-12 afternoon. Arizona State. How bad do you have to be an underdog against Stanford? Apparently Notre Dame bad. They should have been the underdog. But Arizona State, 2.5-point dogs on the road in Palo Alto. No, I will not be at this game. No, I do not want to watch this game. No, I do not want to talk about this game. But there's actually some intriguing options. Total set at 53.5. Kevin, regale me on why a game stack's going to take home the winning lineup here.
I think you can play both running backs. I think you play Valladay for sure. Wyoming transfers. He's actually been really good. He's the only thing they really have on offense, and Stanford is not good at stopping the run. So I like Valladay. I think he's actually a decent play, and he was one of the guys I was talking about mid sixes. I think he's a good play. And I don't think he'll be highly owned in tournaments. So I could definitely play Valladay for sure.
I agree. He's definitely a tournament guy for me because Arizona State's offensive line grades out as bottom 5 in my metrics, but Stanford's rush defense is 127th in rushing success rate. So they're bottom 5 as well. Of course, they did a pretty good job against Notre Dame last week, but I think anyone who's been watching Notre Dame knows that's just a dysfunctional team, a dysfunctional offense with no plan. I've said a lot of things about the Stanford program that I still stand behind. I think they're a joke and they don't make any coaching changes, and they should have a long time ago, and they're certainly regressing, but they seem to be finding a little bit of a groove here. And I think that might continue here. Overall, with Arizona State, yeah, I think Valladay is a tournament guy. I think Emory Jones at quarterback lost his job. They said he's cleared to play after getting knocked out last week. I think he's lost his job. And this guy Bourget at 4.5K came in and was hucking the ball all around the yard. I get Washington's defense is terrible, but he's throwing the ball. He's 4.5K minimum price for a quarterback. Are you crazy enough to pull the trigger in any lineups, Kevin?
I don't think I will. But I could see it. I mean, yeah, I could see it. He had almost 20 fantasy points last week.
I don't hate it. They're probably, if they're smart. And here's the thing. With the Arizona State, no one knows what their team's going to do because they're coached by an ex-high school coach interim after Herm got fired, and all their assistant coaches got fired in the offseason. So no one has the book on any of these guys that are coaching. No one knows what they're going to do. If they choose to throw the ball 40 times, he's going to be a fantastic play. I don't know why they would. They should try to run the ball a ton. One thing I will say is at least we know where the production's coming from. Extremely concentrated touches here. So between Elijah Badger, their top receiver, is at 7.2K. He's too expensive for me, but good player. Yeah. And then Sanders, their slot guy. And then Xavier, Valladay, and Nada. So those 4 guys combined to touch the ball on 42 of their 62 offensive snaps. So pretty much every play they're giving them to one of those 4 guys. And I agree with you. I think Valladay's the most interesting and has the best matchup. All right, turning it over to Stanford. Have you watched Stanford at all this year, Kevin? I hope you haven't, but have you?
I have, unfortunately, and unpopular opinion. I think Filkins is better than EJ Smith. I don't know why, but Filkins just produces. He's pretty good.
I have a hot take before I let you get away. He had the best game of any running back I've ever seen. Averaged 2.8 yards per carry against Notre Dame. Every single one of those 32 carries mattered. He was bowling over guys. He was falling forward. He was moving the chains. That was an extremely impressive 2.8 yards per carry. I will give him that.
And he catches passes, so I don't mind him actually. I kind of like him at 5.8. And again, I don't think he'll be highly owned either. So I just think there's some options at that running back in that price range where you could do worse.
Filkins might be my favorite price adjusted running back on the entire board. Sounds crazy. Stanford's running the slow mesh. They're trying to be Wake Forest. It's a very strange decision. No one really knows why they're making that decision. It's Stanford. Who knows? They're trying to galaxy brain stuff because they think they're smarter than everyone. Long story short, it's finally kind of starting to work. And yes, Filkins is an absolute workhorse. He catches passes. He's the goal line back. He's everything. When they lost EJ Smith for the year, the one thing that I heard from Stanford beat writers going into the year, they're most concerned about on this team was running back depth. They don't trust any of these guys behind Filkins. He's getting 100% of the carries. That's an exaggeration, but he's getting 100% of the carries and the looks out of the backfield at 5.8K. Going against an Arizona team that ranks 109th in success rate, and get this, 115th in defensive line yards, 125th in stuff rate. Listen, I get it. Stanford's, they don't have a good offensive line. I get it. It's pure volume. It's a fantastic matchup. They're at home. They're actually favored. I really like Filkins. What about Stanford's passing attack? Are we crazy enough to get there?
Nah, I won't get there.
Yeah, me neither. Favorable matchup, good price. I get it. Tanner McKee's probably going to play in the NFL, but it's gross and he doesn't run. So, all right, Kevin, we made it. Yep. We made it. I know the folks had to stick around and hear Arizona State Stanford talk because you don't get any better Arizona State Stanford talk on the interwebs. Any final thoughts here on the slate, Kevin?
I think it's going to be another high-scoring slate. I think there's 4 or 5 games that will hit those high totals. It's just picking the right guys. But again, I don't think you have to go crazy as far as paying up for guys. So, so I think it's a mid-range week.
Yeah, mid-range for sure. The pay-up options, not great. But a lot of times what that means, Kevin, is you can also kind of do what you want to do, which can be fun. Hopefully there's no Hyatts that emerge. I didn't have enough Hyatt last week. I've been talking up Hyatt every week and how he's so much better than Brew McCoy. And everyone was on Brew McCoy. Not a lot of people were on Hyatt. I didn't have enough. That was something else.
Yep.
All right. Thank you guys for tuning in. As always, thank you to my co-host, Kevin. He's been fantastic this year. Been a big help to me personally. Some plugs before we get out of here. Fantasy Points. If you're into props, go ahead and check out Fantasy Points. We've been on an absolute heater the last couple of weeks. These props they put up on Prize Picks. I don't know who's making these lines. Again, it's some sort of algo that has just died and has let the prop market run amok. So check that out, Fantasy Points. If you're into CFF, want those write-ups, CFB, DFS write-ups for all the midweek slates and what have you, all the off-season content. Be sure to check out Devi Watch. Has really been a fun project for me this year, Kevin. Really enjoying that. Just going crazy. Too much overload of information on all the nerdy stuff behind CFF. So Devi Watch, give them a check. I'll link it in the description. Other than that, signing off. We will see you guys next week for week 9. Enjoy watching the football and have a great weekend.